Let's get it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Yes, good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. Awesome. So, thank you all for joining us for our July OneDrive office hours. I'm Sophia, a product marketing manager for OneDrive and SharePoint. And for today's session, we have Stephen Rice, principal product manager for OneDrive and SharePoint. He will be presenting on our special topic of hero link sharing. As always, this session will be recorded and available on demand afterwards. So please feel free to also utilize the chat. And we'll also have Q&A at the end with the product team on this topic as well. And for our latest resources, stay tuned for an upcoming episode of the Sync Up podcast, which will feature skills in OneDrive and SharePoint. That podcast is a really great way to stay in touch with our team and hear about our latest innovations. So we'll have this be a regular latest resource. And then next, for our OneDrive and SharePoint audience, I did want to share a new opportunity to co-build your enterprise priorities AI scenario with the SharePoint product team. This is a great way for Copilot and SharePoint users to get the most out of it and directly produce results with our team. So if you think your organization would be interested in building a high-value AI use case with SharePoint, follow the link below. I'll also drop it in the chat to nominate and to learn more about this opportunity. And I will go ahead and hand it over to Stephen to share the roadmap.
Yeah, thanks, Sophia. Taking a quick look at what we're talking about today. Unfortunately, you're stuck with me, at least until we get to the open Q&A at the end. But we'll run through the roadmap briefly, and then we'll jump into our main topic this week, which is hero link sharing. And then, of course, our open Q&A at the end. So let me grab control here. All right, let's start by taking a look at the roadmap. This is the OneDrive roadmap updated for July 2026. A couple of things that I'll call out for all of you. First up, we're continuing to roll out the 1 million 1 million file support for the OneDrive sync experience. This is one of those asks that we've heard from all of you quite often, and we're really excited to get that out there so you can start using it and taking advantage of it. And then the other one I'll call out kind of in the coming down the line space is we're updating our enter a B2B integration for external sharing. So many of you may have seen the Message Center post for that. We're moving everything over to Enter a B2B, so you get the advantages of all of the great capabilities that Entra offers around external collaboration and management and administration. That should be headed your way shortly if it isn't already. So with that, let's jump into our main topic. So hero link sharing. We talked about this a little bit, I think, last year, if I remember correctly. But we are just on the cusp of our full release. So I'm excited for you all to see what we're working on, kind of give you that final peek at the production version of it, and then talk a little bit about the rollout and when you can expect to see it all. So let's talk a little bit just at slideware around kind of the evolution of Microsoft sharing, where it started, where it's going. So if you go way back to the 1980s, sharing was a physical action. You take your floppy disk, if you happen to remember what those are, pass it to the folks that are important to you, then, it became USB drives and things like that. As we moved into the 1990s, we moved into the kind of attachments and copies world. This is really where I think of a lot of the jobs to be done for OneDrive really started to show up, because attachments and copies is no way to collaborate. It's easy for information to get lost, and we could definitely do better. In the 2000s, as SharePoint and OneDrive started to grow and become available for all of you, we started with this kind of direct access model. You want someone to have access to your content, you put them on a list of people that has access, and done. Works, but was a lot of overhead for folks to think through and understand. It was very easy for I forwarded the document to someone, they didn't have access to it. Managing access was kind of a headache. And so in 2014, we introduced link-based sharing. So this was the concept of creating a link that had a scope and a permission, people inside your organization or anyone in the world, and making that available for everyone. So that really enabled that kind of forwarding scenario, really let you start to replace the classic email attachment model, but still created an overhead around managing people and links. And that brings us to kind of the hero link sharing model. This is the next evolution of sharing. It is simple, smart, and secure. That's kind of our guiding mantra for, how we designed it, how we thought about it. And I'm going to show you all of that in a moment. But just to give you some context over, what our platform and experience looks like, the sharing experience is integrated across 64 apps. This might actually be updated now because we get to include some of the Copilot apps as well. But across all of M365, you get one sharing experience. You learn it once, you get to use it everywhere. It's used over 1.2 billion times per month. It is one of the most common things people will do in OneDrive and SharePoint, maybe not surprisingly. And we've had this kind of link sharing model for 12 years. So this is the first major update in that time. But that's enough slideware. Oh no, I've got one more slide. This is our kind of hero slide for the hero link. So we really want the kind of these three principles to be true. One, we want to make you the hero for collaboration. So every item gets a single hero link that lets you control access. You get to decide who gets access to the document. You can update the link. You can change it. You are in control at all times. And then all of our experiences are in a single place, a single UX where you can see who has access, manage access, extend access as needed. That's the final slide. So let's jump into our demo. Hopefully folks are seeing my screen here. Someone wants to give me a thumbs up in the, Teams emoji react. Yeah. Cool. Okay. I'll take verbal as well. Okay, so I've got two users here that I'm going to walk you through. On the left is myself, Stephen. On the right is Cassandra or Cassie. Certainly not named after one of my dogs, but who can say? So I've got this document here. So I am going to click share. I want to share this with my collaborators. And this is the brand new sharing experience for Hero Links. There's kind of two main sections of the dialogue, three as you start to use it, which we'll run through. There's this kind of add people section, which lets you directly add people to the document. The file link settings, which is where you control the Hero Link. And then there's a couple of other pieces, things like letting me know that this file isn't shared yet, the usual copy link command, which will copy the Hero Link to my clipboard and so on. But let's start. I'm going to share this file with Zoe, also not named for one of my dogs. And I'll just type her name in here, select, and that brings you into this focused add people experience. So I can add more people if I want. I can change permission, give me a quick hint on what it might do. Edit is fine in this case. I can write a message if I want. And of course, if I want to have Copilot generate a summary of this document, it can do that for me as well. So I'll come in here. This will get inserted into the email that will be sent. One kind of nifty feature we brought in from some of our legacy experiences that you all had asked us to bring back is the send email notification option. This is particularly useful. You can imagine maybe Zoe is new to the company. I've got to share like 30 files with her to get her up to speed. And, if I don't want to send her 30 emails, I can uncheck email notification. She still gets permission. I can still link to the document later if need be, or give her access to the folder, the site, whatever might be important. But I've avoided spamming her. We'll do that, and I'll click add. And immediately Zoe shows up inside of the experience. I get confirmation that she's got access, and so on. So now next, I want to share this file with Cassie. You'll notice Cassie does not have access to the document yet. The file's link is set to its default, which is only people added to the file have access. So we can see that as myself and Zoe here. And this is where, if I'm a user that is really thinking ahead or knows how sharing works, I would come in here and change this link. I actually want to show you the power of the hero link, though. So I'm just going to copy this link directly. I will actually just do a new tab, paste that in. And then, as you would expect, Cassie's going to get the access denied experience, also updated recently just to make this a little bit more delightful. And of course, Cassie could request access, and then I get an email, and I could accept it, and so on. But the real power of the hero link is that I can just update this URL for the file, re-click it, and now Cassie's able to access the document. I didn't have to send a new link. It's the same link I'd sent previously. It's one URL that I've updated the permissions on. And we can see Cassie now has view access just as I expected. And just in case that, let's just rewind this briefly. So Cassie no longer has access. This also works for the address bar URL because the hero link is the address bar. So if I, again, paste that address bar URL in, Cassie will get access denied, update it back to people in the organization, click the address bar link again, and it works. It's all one hero link that you can configure, manage, and share as needed. And if I close this and reopen, just to refresh it, you'll see I can track and see who's using my links as well. So in this case, I can see that, one Cassandra Brown has used the link, and I can use that to track access and understand who's accessing my content at any time. So now let's flip over to a different document where I've done a bunch of sharing already. So in this case, I've got 9 people in one group added to the file. So the dialogue's kind of already helping me understand the extent of my document. It's got a people in the organization can view link. The first thing is I can now bulk select and update permissions. So say I want Zoe and Michaela here to have different levels of permissions. I can change them both, say, to review, but I can bulk update both of them just to make it a little bit easier and get that access quicker. Another capability, if I want to say maybe confirm if Cassie has access, she does not. I can search for, say, G here, and I can see that he does have access. If I filter through this list, I can see that there's an external user, and we've tagged that just to make it extra clear that they're external users who have access to the content, so I can manage that more directly. And you can filter as well. So if I want to filter to just the groups, I can see that all company members have access. If I want to filter to just external, I can do that. And then you can filter by permission level as well. All of that just making it super easy to see who has access to the content, manage it, change it, whatever is needed. So that is the kind of what we think of as the base level of hero link sharing, the kind of simple capability of adding people, creating a hero link, managing the hero link, all there. But we still have a couple of advanced capabilities that we offer as well for those kind of more granular sharing scenarios if it might be needed. So first up, if I click into these kind of more options, you can see I can actually create a new sharing link. Let's make this an anyone link. I'm going to make this, say, a link from my marketing org. This is an external partner that we have that we work with. I can change it to maybe review permission. And of course, this is where we get features like expiration. So if I want this to link to only live for let's say a week, I can do so. And this creates a separate sharing URL that I can then see in the dialog. It has the name that I gave it so that I know what the link is being used for. It shows me about the expiration date. And this lets me get granular links when I need them. This is the type of capability we offer today, and we found that most users don't need in this majority of scenarios, but we still keep it when it's needed. This is also the backwards compatibility story. So if you have sharing links that you've created for documents today, when hero link sharing rolls out, they'll just show up in this kind of other sharing link section. You can still manage, delete, and use them in whatever way makes sense. Let's keep going into some even more advanced scenarios. First up, I want to share this file with Cassie. Oops. Cassandra. Just so that she has access to it. And you'll notice I gave Cassandra edit access, which will be important in a moment. Let's close this for a moment. So I'm going to come here into the sharing settings, and this is where we have a couple of advanced settings. For those of you who have been following hero links through our development process, this is probably the first time you've seen this feature set because it's the newest set. So we have a couple of new controls here, and I'll walk you through each of them one by one. First up, you may be familiar with a feature we have at the site level today called Members Can Share. This is a setting that says, hey, anyone who has edit access is allowed to share content within the site. And if you turn it off, it applies to all content within the site, all files, all folders, which can be a pretty heavy hammer. What we've done is bring effectively that setting down to the per file or per folder level. So right now, people with edit access are allowed to reshare the file. That's the default that we have today. If I uncheck this, though, so let me go back and grab the link so you can see what it looks like from Cassie's perspective now. So Cassie has edit access to the document. I mean, I can type letters in. But if I come in here to share, you'll see I get the request permission on behalf of the scenario. So I can copy the link that had been existed. So, Steven had previously, or I had previously configured this link to people in the org can view. I can still get that link, but I can't change it. I can't add or change any of the people that are already in the file. If I go to, add someone else, I can request access for them, but I can't add them directly. So this is giving me more control over who's allowed to share my file while still allowing people to collaborate and, edit with me as needed. Similarly, we have another setting that is around applying folder access. So if you're familiar with inheritance within inside of OneDrive and SharePoint, Very briefly, this is the concept that when you share a folder, it shares the files within it. I can choose to change that behavior. So this item, if I've unchecked it, will now not take any permission changes from any of the parents. So we see this being used most commonly in kind of subs contract scenarios. Say I've got Contoso and Fabricam as two partners that I'm working with. They're both inside this customers folder, but I don't want anyone to be able to share the customers folder and get access to both, Contoso and Fabricam. So I can change this kind of shield setting on both of them, and it now, I can continue to share the file and folders directly, but I can't share the parent folder and have these kind of unintentional permission changes get filtered down through. Both of these are more advanced features. They're available for owners today, so people who have full control on the file, but are really helpful for, enabling, more control over who can access their content. Two more features. One, you may be familiar with the stop sharing feature. So if I wanted to remove all unique access for this file, I can do so via that button. I'm not going to do that in case folks have questions about the experience. And then one more scenario I want to call out is this reset link capability. This is extra advanced. We expect folks to only need this in case of, security incidents or things like that. You can imagine maybe a scenario where, in this case, let's say I've got a file that needs to be shared with an anyone link. So I need to share this to like my marketing partners inside of another org. So it's a public link. You have to have the link in order to be able to use it, but maybe someone makes a mistake and posts that link on Twitter. If I want to change the URL for the file, I want to reset the hero link entirely, get something completely new. That's where this reset link capability comes in. So it resets the URL, creates a new URL. Anyone who had access via the hero link previously no longer does. And then you get the new one going forward. So yeah, that is the kind of whirlwind tour for the hero link capability. Let me drop us back into the slides and tell you the most important thing that you're all waiting for, which is dates and things like that. These are the kind of the major scenarios we talked through. The single hero link that you saw, the hero link is the address bar URL. So regardless of how you share, it works the way you expect. Improved control over notification, the ability to share a summary, and of course, you saw the modern access request experience as well. The exciting piece, Hero Links is rolling out starting at the very end of August, and we expect it to take, somewhere between 1 to 3 months. If you're interested in being early, feel free to reach out to me, and we can look at getting you enabled a little bit earlier. But that is the official and final timeline change. So we are going to start rolling out in August, and we're really excited for you all to get your hands on it. Yeah. Questions now that I've been talking for a bit. Yeah, Nikolai.
Hey, Stephen. Thanks for the presentation. I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
So this is basically the hero link is not just for OneDrive, it's for OneDrive and SharePoint or for the entire M365 ecosystem.
So it applies to any content that's stored inside of OneDrive and SharePoint. There are a couple of very minor exceptions where we don't have the full set of hero link support today. That's mainly things like .clipchamp files. The one place it does not apply to yet is SharePoint embedded. So you won't see it for things like Loop. But those are all things that we'll work on, post-release.
Well, eventually, you guys are envisioning it coming to the rest of the.
If it's stored inside of OneDrive and SharePoint, it will get a hero link.
Okay, thank you. One more question. So the URL has changed now that leads to the content of what it sees. In the past, sometimes it's been useful because the path of the file or the folder has been present in the URL when that is shared. So, for example, when people lost access or they lost some data, they would come and they would say, "This is the link, I was trying to access." Are there any identifiers, like could be file IDs or drive IDs or anything like that in the URL that could be used to kind of reverse engineer where the data is?
I will need to double check. I don't think there's anything in the URL itself because that's all encoded, but you can use the APIs to decode the hero link and find out more information about it.
In what way? There will be an ID or something? Just overall.
So I was just looking at the API documentation recently. So you can let's see if I can remember off the top of my head. There is I don't remember the specific API. You can pass the link in to, I believe it's Graph, and then get information. It'll tell you which document ID it's assigned to and things like that.
Okay.
If you have specific questions, I'm happy to follow up after and pull some other folks in to get you a very specific answer if it's helpful.
Yes, that would be helpful, but offline, obviously. Just one more thing for the when sharing link is created in SharePoint under the permissions in SharePoint sites, that's in OneDrive as well, even though it's inaccessible, it creates these permission subsets that are called unique permissions for sharing links or limited access for sharing links, and then the ID of the link with people. Would that work in a similar way on the back end for SharePoint, let's say?
Yeah, so that should generally work the same way. The one advanced thing I'll let you know for all the heads up for most folks is this won't matter for you. That will only get created once the link is in use. So if I change a file's hero link to people in the organization, there's no group that's created for it at that time. It waits until it needs to be created, and that's part of how we ensure we're not creating a bunch of links and permissions that aren't being used across the system.
And for example, if the group was created previously, so let's say I create a link and I say edit, and I share it with John and whoever, right? And then I changed, this group is being provisioned with specific levels of access, and then I change the link, and then somebody accesses it. Then would a new group be provisioned and the old one deleted, or just changes the permissions on the already existing?
It changes the permissions on the original group. There's one link, and then you change permissions on that link. It's we call it internally a flexible link. It's capable of changing scope, and it's capable of changing permissions as well.
Okay, great. I had some ask and feedback about training materials, but I'll ping you offline if that's no problem. Just have
no problem.
time for people. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'll do it once I'm done talking. But I have a couple of videos we've generated around that show off the new experience. I'm happy to drop those into the chat for folks if they're interested.
Yeah, I was mentioning this just real quick because we enabled it, as you know, in one of our tenants, and we're building training materials because we are looking to adopt it maybe earlier, and we want to make sure we're prepared with everything. However, one of the feedback from the communications team was that a lot of these materials, there's like a video that you are narrating. I know there's one on YouTube on the learning community and things like that, but in those, it's very the Copilot features are very much accentuated, and we're wondering if there were like ones that are not, highlighting Copilot, even though I know you guys, are selling it and everything, but that it's highlighting Copilot because the majority of the users, are not that, and we would want anything like that as is. And
One
also
thing,
get the feedback if that's possible.
Certainly. Yeah. One thing I'll show off briefly as well, because I didn't run through it. We do have a first run experience that users will see the first time they see the new experience. So it runs you through the kind of core concepts of the hero link and, adding people and the like. It's just 3 or 4 different steps, but is intended to be there to help inform users how things work as well. So when this rolls out, they'll all see that too.
Does that get activated like immediately the first time somebody?
They see it the first time the dialogue shows up, and then you can access it at any time through the ... and the view tutorial as well.
Well, that's great. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, Mike, I think you're next.
Yeah, thanks. Just a couple questions. So, if we had set OD, so in the advanced settings, you showed that there's the options now that you can uncheck or check the people with edit access can reshare. So if on the tenant we've set ODB members can share to off, what does that look like? Is that grayed out?
And this is locked off.
Okay.
Yep. So you can think of it, if you disable it for all of OneDrive, it applies, it's always going to be disabled for all of OneDrive. If you disable it for the site, it will always be disabled for the site. And then if you disable it for the file, you can disable it individually. But we'll always respect whatever the most restrictive policy is there.
Okay, great. And then I saw in the chat someone commented on, can we still set expiry dates? It looks like it's not available right now. If that's correct, how would Hero Links utilize that feature on the admin side where we can set expiry for people in org, right?
So today you can do expiration for what we call additional sharing links. So that if you have a policy set for people in org, that will still show up here.
Okay.
We don't yet have expiration for hero links. That is the next thing we're working on, and engineering is actually kicking that off now. I didn't know if did I see Lincoln in the group?
You got it right, man. Good job.
There we go. So yeah, Lincoln here is our PM who is working on that feature literally right now, and I'll have more to share soon.
Okay, so my concern, I'll just throw this out there, is that the tenants in August start shifting to hero links, right? And our users want the ability to set expiry dates, especially on people in org. Is that going to be available for them at that time before it goes in production, or do we have to communicate this to them somehow?
Yeah, it won't be available in August when we start rolling out. Link, I don't know if you want to like imply a date or or even a time. Do you have a sense on time scale?
We're
Just to give
not
folks a
ready to
sense?
communicate dates yet, but it's the super high priority feature for us. We're working super hard on it. We understand the concern. I'd love to hear more about like how you feel about that.
Yeah, just because our firm is over 500,000 users, and it's something we definitely do utilize the expiry link, right? So yeah, I'll reach out to our CSAM offline and we'll discuss. But yeah, okay,
So
great.
question about that. Do you set policy on that at the sort of admin center level, or do you rely on end users making that choice themselves when they share? Or a
Now
combination
that
of
we
both?
have that feature, right? Now that we have that feature to set it at the admin level, we do, right? But a lot of users want to have a shorter window to that the links work, right? So there's a lot of concern about links being out there. Essentially, users don't want to manage permissions, right? So they just by default are creating people in org links and setting a short expiry window so that not too many people get access to the file after the date. And it's just will be hard because we've pushed that within our org,
and that will continue to work.
Okay.
Right. So I think the takeaway is like the playbook that you're running today, where you create the additional link, you set the expiration on it, you use that. All that will continue to work. The thing that we won't have on V1 is that capability on main link. And so I think it'll be
okay. Gotcha.
And so we're not going to disrupt your current playbook.
Okay.
And so I think that's good news. And then with this new feature that we're working on, you'll be able to sort of stop using those additional links. You'll have the option to just use the main link, and you could set if you then configure that main link to be openable by anyone, you can set an expiration on that. And so just continue to use your current playbook for until we launch this new feature, and then you can continue to use the existing playbook if you want for forever. But we're not going to disrupt the way you're doing it today.
Okay. Last question is, so right now with people in org links, right? A user can create it and access isn't granted till they actually use the link. So those the data within those files or folders doesn't appear in Copilot. It looks like you can make a change with the hero link. And then I saw when you were doing the demo that Cassandra was able to like open that file right away. Is there an impact to Copilot results?
No, it works the exact same way.
Okay, got it. Perfect.
Yep. So just to super emphasize this because we get this question often. So in this case, let's use the more private file. So I've got this Chirel catalog file. At this point, Zoe has access. Cassandra has access via this people in the organization link. Yeah. If someone goes into Copilot and asks about content or even asks about this document specifically, Cassie, Zoe, myself are the only people that will get results. Everyone else will not be able to find the file. They can't index, search, Copilot. None of that will be exposed to them anyway. If I send them the URL and they show up in this list, then they can do and search in those ways.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yep. Thanks, Stephen.
Great question. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
All right, next up is Tony.
And hi, Lincoln. Hi, Stephen. Hi, Lincoln. Thanks for everything so far. Some great questions from other people as well. So quickly from me, the apply folder access changes in advanced settings.
Yes.
Is the default for that checked?
The default is checked which is effectively the behavior you would get in the product today. So out of box, everything works the way users are expecting, and then they get these additional controls if they so desire.
Yep, great. It's good that it is still the same as it is today.
Yep, we wanted this to be as familiar and easy to adopt for folks as possible.
Great stuff. That was it from me.
Awesome, thank you, Tony. I'm not keeping up on the chat. I'm gonna scroll briefly, and then we'll get to your question.
I'll look at chat, see what I can do in chat.
Cool. So there's a question from Hilda around what happens to the default sharing link type in the SharePoint admin setting. So you have the link people with existing access in SharePoint. What happens if you have specific people as the default link? Is there any difference? So we're not changing that setting. That will continue to apply to any legacy scenario or API that gets kind of an additional sharing link. We will introduce a new setting in the SharePoint PowerShell to start on a per site collection basis that lets you configure the default hero link. The default is only people added to the file, which effectively maps to our most restrictive option, somewhere between people with existing access and specific people. And then users can update it to something different as needed. But it'll start at the most restrictive option and then go up from there. Craig.
I just had a quick question that may have already been answered, but will we have the possibility to turn the hero links on or off based on what we want, or are you just pushing it out and we get it when we get it?
You'll get it when it starts rolling out. When the experience is available, it'll just start showing up for folks across your organization.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Let's see. Sorry, continuing to scroll through. Fabian asked if advanced settings remains the crusty old SharePoint UI. So yes, we continue to have this go to advanced settings. It continues to look just as crusty as you imagine. The thing I'll say to your question, Fabian, is one of the things we're doing with the new experience, things like the send email notification option and now the reshare controls, is we want as much of the stuff that's in this UI to get integrated into our modern experience in a way that makes sense and explains what it is. Most people don't know what delete unique permissions mean. One we're particularly interested in is this check permissions option, a thing that goes and lets you do a search and confirm where and how people have access. Those are all things on our backlog that we're excited to get to, but not available just yet. Until we have fully duplicated the functionality here, we'll continue to give you the escape hatch to the advanced settings. Let's see. Hilda also asked if it was possible for an admin setting to uncheck these. Not today, but a great feature request. I'll say one other thing we're thinking about is having these be configurable via label as well. So you might imagine a file that's been labeled as highly confidential should by default have the ability for people that had access to reshare be unchecked. None of that's available in the initial release, but definitely the place we are starting to think about. Nikolai.
Yes, a couple more questions, just real quick. So, because I didn't understand correctly. So when this hits GA, you were saying that anonymous links, the expiration of links will be there, right?
So all the features you have today for expiration will continue to work. There just won't be expiration for the new hero link concept.
Okay, and then it means that it will eventually come, right?
Yeah, that's the thing that Lincoln is actively working on right now.
Okay. The reason I'm asking is because it's after audit, it's a security prerequisite for us to have any open links created have to expire. So, do I understand correctly that in between GA and this feature release, users will be able to set anyone links that are not expirational?
Correct. Yes.
Oh, it's a bummer.
And
yeah, after that, would they be able, when the feature comes, would they be just grandfathered in, or how would it work?
So I'll say that's some of the details Lincoln is working through right now. The rough thinking is that similar to the expiration features we have today, when you turn on like anyone link expiration today, it doesn't automatically apply to all the existing links. But when those links get used, we do then apply the policy to them using some logic. So it does give you eventual coverage for links that are in use.
Okay, yeah, that was really important to clarify, because is there a way to delay maybe the hero link once this feature comes for a specific tenant, or is it just rolled out?
It'll roll out once it's available, and yeah, become available. If there are concerns there you can always disable anyone links on specific sites or things like that to kind of mitigate risk. But yeah, if you have concerns, I'd love to learn a little bit more. You can reach out to Lincoln and myself, and we can discuss.
Okay, yeah, and one last thing for the breaking inheritance. When somebody breaks in the inheritance of the file here in the sharing, will that act on the back end as the same way as regular?
Yep. All works the way it does today.
Okay, and it appears in the reports wherever there's permission inheritance is the same.
Yeah, it'll show in the various reports in Graph Data Connect, in auditing, all of those should continue to work and give you this information.
Okay, thank you. And there's still ability, I know it's hidden deep, but there's still an ability to, like in SharePoint, to create your own custom permission sets, like a modified read or a read without
Yep.
download or all this shenanigans. I see this is getting buried. Is there any plans to actually make this to incorporate it in this new sharing methodology, or is it something that's going to be left in the past?
Nothing planned at the moment. But if it's a thing you'd be interested in, definitely let us know. And we can always, review and consider.
Okay, great. Well, I'll ping you for the other ones offline, but thank you very much.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm still working through chat. I feel like I'm halfway through at this point. Aaron, earlier you asked if this would be available starting in August, regardless of tenant type. So this will follow our normal rollout cadence. So we start by rolling out to the target release environments. Then we'll start rolling for standard production, and then we start to hit the various kind of special clouds. So it'll follow the normal process there and be available. McCall.
Hello, everyone. I just have a quick question. What happens to all of the current sharing, so the regular links and the classic permissions? Will it be anyway incorporated in the hero link, or they will just remain as they are?
Yeah, so any links you have today, they'll show up in this other sharing links section.
Okay.
So if this was a file that, I shared 2 months ago without, any expiration or things like that, it would just show up here, and that link is still available if I need it, and so on. And generally what we expect to see as folks start using it, like this is what we see inside of Microsoft as we've used it, is folks will start using primarily the hero link, and we'll use these kind of additional links less and less because they're just not needed for as many scenarios.
Okay. And then what about the classic permissions? Because right now the people, if they send an email, they are granting direct access still, and
Yep.
will
Folks
that
who have
go away
direct
completely?
permission, they'll just show up in this list, regardless
Okay.
of where they were shared to.
Oh, that's very cool. All right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, thanks.
We know sharing is, a core part of workflow for many organizations, and we wanted to make this change as easy for all of you as possible. So wherever we can, nothing breaks. We have full backwards compatibility for all the sharing that you're already doing, and so on.
That's great. So maybe just one more quick question.
Yeah.
To the expiry, are there any plans to put like a policies for the external sharings? I mean, to expire automatically external links, same way as it is for anyone and company wide right now.
Yeah, we do have a feature we call expiring external access that operates slightly differently. It operates at the site level instead of on an individual file level. So that's kind of our solution for that today. And then we're always looking at, as we were talking with Lincoln about the expiration features around hero links, we're looking at other places where expiration makes sense to basically create permission lifecycle for all of you. Next up, Thelen.
Yes, hello. It looks really good, the feature. When I share a file now with the whole group or with the whole M365 group, will that show on the top of the list?
You said if you share with an
with the whole M365 group, like if I share a file with a whole different team.
So it doesn't show up necessarily at the top of the list, but it does show up in the list. So this is a security group or a modern group. If I created another one, it would show up in here. That's where this kind of filter capability comes in, as it just makes it a little bit easier to find the different groups that have been added as well.
So you filter there. So that's the same as the second tab now in the current dialog with switches
exactly.
groups. You filter there on groups and you have the same view. Okay.
Yeah. So for folks who aren't familiar, today in the experience, the manage access experience has a people, groups, and links section. The biggest piece of feedback we got from that is that folks want to see it all in one place. And so that is now accomplished via this kind of filters experience.
I didn't see the filter before. That's quite useful. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how can I edit the classic link? Can I just click on that, like the other sharing link, if I want to edit
so
the expiry date or anything on that? Okay.
Yep. All the capabilities you expect are still there.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Other questions from folks? If not, I'll start burning through the chat again. Yeah, Frank.
Yeah, hi. Just a small question. Is there any kind of documentation available? Because the only thing I found is the announcement from 1 year ago. And if it's introduced in 1 month in August, it would be nice to have some kind of documentation so we can educate the end users.
Yeah, let me so we have in some documentation we've started working on internally. Our policy is generally that we'll update things once the rollout is about to begin. So you can expect to see those updating. Let's say probably about a month from now is when we'll get that started as the rollout begins. It's basically trying to, handle making sure that folks who have questions today are able to get answers, and folks who know what to expect have that as well. I'm double checking to make sure I've got my demo videos that you all can use as well. They're intended to be used in documentation or internal rollouts. Let me make sure the link for it works for all of you, and then I'll drop it in the chat in just a moment. Still scrolling through. I think I'm 20 minutes back still at this point. So if you've got a more recent question, please do raise your hand. Hilda had asked, when the Hero link is introduced, will Microsoft automatically consolidate all existing sharing links and convert them to the central Hero link? No. So like I said, they'll show up in other sharing links, and then you'll get a brand new Hero link that you can start sharing from there as well. Let's see. Annie had asked, can you confirm that with the Hero link, using the share option in an item for a user who already has access will not result in broken permission inheritance? So if the user already has access at that same permission level, I don't believe we break inheritance in those cases, but I'll have to double check to confirm. Generally, we try not to break inheritance unless it's absolutely necessary. Let's see. More folks asking about documentation. By the way, since we've got 20 minutes left. If you have non-Hero link questions, feel free to ask those as well. Let me get our Q&A slide up. We've got other folks from the team that are also happy to answer questions while we're reading through here. So let's see. Aaron, you'd ask, does turning on or off the tenant setting for the ability to share reset all files, or do individual files remember a custom setting regardless? I'm not quite sure I'm following the question. If you wanted to come off mute and clarify. Generally, I guess.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh yeah, I can. Go for it.
Yeah, so you talked about people who had a link being able to reshare or not.
Yeah.
If you turn that on or off, like on the tenant level in SharePoint, does that then reset it back to what you just did on the tenant level, or do the files that maybe if it was on and you turned it off for a specific file, does it save that whether you turn on or off the tenant setting again?
Yeah, so it effectively saves it. Like the way you can think about, under the covers, it all working is when we're determining if the user is allowed to share, we check all three policies. And if any one of them says you're not allowed to share, then we block it at that point. So if you've previously disabled it on a file and then you turn your tenant level setting on or off, that file level setting will still continue to block things regardless of the tenant setting. The only thing you aren't able to do is if you say no resharing at the tenant level, it doesn't matter what the file setting is, you'll still be blocked regardless.
So from a user perspective, if you turn it off at the tenant level, is it still going to show the check mark in the file, but it just won't work? Or does it get rid of the check mark?
I'll have to double check. I know it disables the control and tells you and doesn't let you change it. I don't remember if it shows it checked or unchecked. I'll have to confirm. It's a good question.
Okay. The other question I had a little earlier, just briefly, right now you can have links that kind of show the path, and I think someone else asked about this, but just to confirm, we'll no longer be able to have that kind of URL linked to a file where it shows the name of the folder and a slash and then.
So you can still get to that via the details pane. So if you open up the details pane for a file, there is a path-based URL that you can get. It is just not the Hero link.
Okay.
This is more related to the URL
available.
changes. Yeah, it's still available when needed.
Okay,
yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Felon, you asked a bit ago, is there still a link to the classic permissions dialog behind the ellipses menu? You can get to the advanced settings page. which I believe gets you access to the classic dialogue if needed.
It's under the gear.
Yep. Tony.
Right, sorry, a non-hero question. We
Yeah,
saw
please.
we saw added to the roadmap this month, document library views available in OneDrive. So if you're looking at a SharePoint document library in OneDrive, you'll be able to see the views of the document, switch the view of the document library, I believe. That says July for rollout starting. Is that going to happen?
We have Liz on the call.
We do. Hey, thank you. Great question. We are still planning on rolling out starting probably in the next couple of weeks. And so you should be seeing that soon. But I think it's going to be maybe a couple weeks later than it says in the message center post. So I'll work to get that updated.
All right, great stuff, but a great feature.
Yeah, we're really excited about it. And please share any feedback you have once you start playing around with it.
Will do.
All right, thanks.
So I raised my hand to
Yeah,
wrap
go
up
for
one
it.
of the questions in chat just because I wanted to chat about this with you, Stephen. Alejandro asked, there's a scenario where use of OneDrive is necessary but not to share. I recommend thinking about some simple form of blocking sharing with users at the organization. And so, I just wanted to clarify here, there's no tenant level switch for removing the ability to share with users of the organization, but there is a site level switch. You can control that on a per site basis. And actually, showing you a little bit how the sausage is made, this is me asking a question to Stephen. That site level switch can be set on a OneDrive my site collection, correct?
Yeah, so there's a setting. Let's see if I can remember that. It's in PowerShell only today. It's set SPO site dash disable company-wide sharing links is, I believe, the
It's amazing.
The things that are in my brain. So that does disable company link capability for the existing scenario. It also applies to hero links as well. Depending on your question, though, if you're looking to disable sharing completely, like you don't even want to allow direct sharing, there's no way to do that today. The closest would be, configure a SharePoint site, turn off the ability for editors to be able to share, and then have very strict control over who's allowed to do the sharing. Generally, I'll say we think collaboration, sharing are core to the DNA for OneDrive and SharePoint. It's half of the name of SharePoint. So we give you lots of controls over how you can do it, but we do want to make sure collaboration is available for folks. Yeah, Nikolai.
Yeah. So, you mentioned that the old links will stay and they could be edited. And this editing that old link, change it, convert it to a hero link, or just applies the restrictions on it specifically, and it stays there until deleted or until.
Yeah, so it doesn't get converted into a hero link. It shows up under other sharing links in that kind of third section of the dialogue. And actually, your question's well timed because I was starting to type a response to Thelen as well. So Thelen kind of was saying, so we have classic permissions, classic links, and hero links, which feels like a lot of choice. It is. The way we are kind of framing this, and we recommend all of you frame this for your users as well. If you know who you want to share with, use direct permissions. I want to share with Lincoln. I type in Lincoln's name. I click add. I'm done. If I want to make something available for a broader audience, I'm including in a Teams message or an email, or I'm not sure who we want to share with, use the hero link. Configure it, set up the file's access. The file will remember that link setting. So if I, open up the file, change it to people in org, send it out. If I come back, in a week and reopen the share dialog, it's still set to people in org. The additional sharing links or classic sharing links are there as really more advanced user scenarios. Those cases where you actually need multiple URLs, you have them when you need them, but we've intentionally put them into that kind of ... create new sharing link option so that users don't have to deal with that complexity if they don't need it. That being said, if you continue to get feedback that sharing feels complicated, do let us know. Our goal here was to build, a simple, smart, secure sharing experience. We think we've done that, but if we're finding that there's more to do, Lincoln and I are both still focused on how we can make sharing as delightful as possible, and we don't expect this to be the end of collaboration or the end of improvement here. There's always more to do.
Okay, thank you. And
Yeah.
one more thing. So as you said, when somebody decides to basically break the file inheritance using the sharing dialog, um, it's correct that this has potential to affect other collaborators, right? Like for example, you have access to this file which is in folder A, and then and I've shared this folder with a specific subset of people, right? Now the hero link comes out. I go to this file under that folder, and I say, okay, I share it with John, but I also would like to, break the inheritance or whatever that dialogue is called. So when I do that and click save, well, that basically results in breaking the file inheritance, the permission inheritance on this specific file. Therefore, it will also prevent people who have access from it from the folder to be able to access it. Is that right?
So it depends a little bit on order of operations and which settings you've configured where. Does a caveat for folks. Permission inheritance breaking is probably the most complicated thing that exists inside of OneDrive and SharePoint, certainly within the collaboration space. Just for context, when it came to making sure this all worked the way we expected, Copilot estimated for me that we spend at minimum 50 hours as a team working through the various inheritance scenarios and making sure things worked the way they expect. So I don't expect that. Well, I'll just say it's a complicated space, and I'm not going to be able to do it justice in the 2 minutes I'm going to spend answering this. That being said, generally the way to think about it is inheritance breaking happens behind the scenes. It's part of making the collaboration process work. Effectively, what it means is if you have a file or a folder and then a file, the file takes the permissions of its parent by default. That's what we call inheriting permissions. When you share just the file, it breaks inheritance, which means it copies all the permissions from the folder down to the file and then adds new permissions for the file. By default, anytime you add permissions to the folder, it will push permissions down to all of its children, regardless of whether they have broken inheritance or not. That's behavior we've learned over the years. Like people just expect when I share a folder, it applies to the files. The new kind of block folder access from applying to this item is our answer for folks who need additional customization or want additional control over inheritance. But generally, users don't deal with it or interact with it because it is a confusing space. Does that answer your question, Nikolai?
Yeah, and it's also a very good response because this is exactly why I asked. We have a problem with people who don't really comprehend how it works, and I wanted to maybe propose if there could be like a little disclaimer or a warning when they do that it's possible that they would affect permissions to other people, but only if that makes sense to you as well. I was just thinking that it's a lot of power for end users who might not realize they might be breaking something. And one final thing you mentioned earlier for the details pane, that we'll still be able to obtain the original path of the file details pane. Just a little feedback to you because it's something that I've noticed the last couple of months. When you go to a folder that's, let's say it's like a very big folder, tens of thousands of files and subfolders, and a lot of people, hundreds of people collaborating on that item. When you try to reach the bottom of the details pane, you will never be able to do that because it's an endless scroll. Like literally, it's an endless scroll, and you can never get to the bottom to see the details of the file. Even if I've been trying like scrolling for 15 minutes, and it just happens. So maybe some kind of like an element that basically takes you to the bottom without having to load all these entries.
Are you saying the length of the details pane depends on the length of the list?
Yes.
So that it does today. Yes. So like
that's not great.
It's like exactly what you're saying, that the activity just kind of continues and pushes the details to the bottom. We're actually working on a fix to that where we're going to bring activity kind of into its own tab and separate the details, like the file or folder details and the activity. So you'll be able to kind of independently see each of those. So yeah, that is good feedback. I think we might need an intermediate kind of like stopgap, just pull me back to the bottom in the meantime while we work on that. But yeah, thanks for sharing that feedback. That's a real problem.
Yes. Thank you. That's really great to hear. And a similar thing happens, by the way, for your information, on the new interface, recycle bin items. So on the old interface, recycle bin items, you will scroll and there will be pages. They will be paginated. And the new one, you can just if somebody, I faced this recently, somebody deleted like 100,000 items. So if you actually want to reach to the bottom, you cannot. It will just keep producing item entries until the end, I guess. But yeah, that's another place where it's the same. And thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for the feedback.
I want to call out a question, a non-sharing question briefly. Let me, where to go? Dania, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, you asked about the OneDrive photo experience for business. I'd love to learn more about what specifically you're interested in there.
So I noticed that on my Windows enterprise machine, there came up a brand new app, OneNote or OneDrive Photos app. And I was like, oh, cool. Is this a replacement for photos? And I went to open it with my business account and it's all, no, you cannot have that. You need a personal account. I'm like, darn. So I was wondering, because I saw that you could put it into different folders, if the experience, it said to go ahead and look in the web into your files. And I was like, well, I didn't get a long chance to do that. I was wondering if the experience inside the web version for like the business side where you had for your work or school account is going to be the same as inside the app.
Yeah.
Because I was able to pull in my local ones and it was able to show me all of them and I had, preview and everything.
Yeah. Aru, I'm going to put you on the spot because I think you're probably the closest to an expert we have. Do you want to share a little bit about how we're thinking about the kind of OneDrive commercial photo space?
Yeah. And before I do, I'd love to kind of dive a little bit deeper into your question. Because I don't think I've completely grasped which app you were referring to when you mentioned app. Are you thinking about the Windows app that our team has been sharing more about for personal use cases for photos?
Yes, because it came up and I know my users are going to ask and I had to level set and say, no, it's only going to take a personal account. That is how it is. And I was like, well, what can I offer them in, that's going to be comfortable?
Absolutely. And one more question, and then I'll definitely answer what you're looking for. Which endpoints do your users mainly use? Is it web? Is it desktop? Windows, Mac, mobile?
They mainly use desktop and we have a mix. We're Windows and Mac shop.
Okay, great. So you've likely heard the news, and that's where this came up about the OneDrive team bringing a new Photos app experience to Windows. That will be the modern experience for photo navigation, albums, sharing, reliving your memories. And you're right that this first offering that we are bringing to prod is going to be consumer focused. Now, that said, we are actively working on enabling AAD account support as well. And that is very soon on the horizon as for us to be able to enable that. And our intention is to have that AAD support enabled before we actually change the default experience on Windows to link to that Photos app. Now it's not going to be full featured in terms of one-to-one parity with what we're offering for consumer users, just because the scenarios are quite different. But yes, AAD users will be able to navigate their commercial photos within that app as well. So that's part one to your question for the immediate term answer. And then part two is where things get a little more open-ended. I won't be able to share timelines. But we are looking into a more productivity-focused workflow solution for photos as well. We're in very early planning stages, and so if your users are doing productivity tasks with their media content at work, I would love to chat with you offline, and I'm sure folks in the team would as well, to understand those scenarios so that as we continue to build on media solutions for work, we can take your use case into account as well. So I'll pause there. Does that help?
It does, because I was looking at it and it had some of the same capabilities from what I was reading as, say, Google Photos, where you can start identifying people and things, which would be fantastic because it kind of implies that that AI can actually be used when somebody's looking for a job aid that's just, a one image, step by step, 1, 2, 3, 4. And what I've had to do is convert those images into PDFs so that it can read the data in the image and then put it back into my library so it can be searched.
Your primary use case there is search and find for your photos.
Yes.
right?
And I'm doing the same thing for video. And so it's a large undertaking.
That is fantastic feedback. I'm sorry that you have to convert those to PDFs right now to meet your needs. That is not good enough. We will continue to work on that as well. So part 1 and part 2 of the answer is yes, you will see AAD support in the Windows Photos app experience that we're delivering very soon, and complete act on search for media editing to get a lot better. We're on it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right. We are a little over time. If you still have questions, feel free to send them my way, and I will either answer them or redirect to other folks on the team. Or you can bring them to future office hours. You can always sign up at aka.ms/OneDrive office hours to get additional sessions, things like that. Yeah, thank you all for joining and for staying over if you're still here. Hope you all have a great rest of your day.